Programming drums is just one of those things that takes a long time, and it can be really infuriating, and lots of things, lots of variables such as rhythmic pushes or volume things are not as easy to program as if you'd played it in. Let's take a look. I have here a weighted keyboard connected to my computer which has the Abbey Road drum kit on, which is one of the contact sounds. Now, this is no substitute for a real drummer in your studio, so any drummers watching this, I quite understand. This is just something where you can get your sounds just reasonably conveniently before you get your drummer in. You must get your drummer in to play your tune because he or she will have much more control and much more to give your song. Now, we've got a bass drum on C. Now this is C1. Great sounds. And then we've got a snare on D1, hi-hat on F sharp 1, open hi-hat on A sharp 1. And then between them, we've got the third sound that you can get on the hi-hat, which is the hi-hat cymbals simply closing with the foot only, no sticks involved. So actually, when you're playing a hi-hat rhythm, you've got to be careful of the sounds that you use. Now, just playing a standard 8-beat, I'd have my right hand on F sharp, left hand on C and D. Now, there was quite a lot going on there dynamically in the hi-hats. Quite a big variation in the range. Now, of course, no computer can reproduce the dynamic range that you get out of a real drum kit in a real studio with real mics. Everything has to be just condensed a little bit so that the quietest sounds are still completely audible on the computer. So it's actually squeezed ever so slightly. This is not such a problem, but you've got to make sure that you use not only a weighted keyboard so that you've got the depth of dynamic, but also have your monitor level quite high so that your speakers, you can hear exactly what you're doing. This also means that you would play naturally, you would just hold back a bit, and then when it's the chorus, when you're really going for it, you can get that sort of dynamic gear change. Now, sometimes you need things like a snare fill or double bass drums, for example, and they sound unrealistic if everything's the same volume level. Sounds much better when you're actually playing with some variation in dynamics. The same with the bass drum. It's quite a big variation there. Now, if I was doing something where the bass drum was the main beat, had a loud sound on it, if I had a double bass drum, if it happened beforehand, you would have a quiet note like this. The same would happen after that main beat. Masses of variation in that bass drum sound. Now, of course, don't worry if you're playing it into a computer and you get a sound that's maybe the wrong dynamic, you can change it afterwards. But really, what this does, it involves just basic tweaking here and there rather than having to spend hours programming. Now, other sounds, we've dealt mostly, well, just with the kick and the snare and the hi-hats. The snare drum on this particular sound is across two keys to simulate the two hands that you would use in a snare fill. It's pretty realistic, and in between the D sharp you have a rim shot sound, so it's snare and the stick hitting the side of the drum at the same time. That sort of thing. Now, C sharp has a cross stick. So there's a lot for that snare drum. You've got the snare itself, the rim shot, and the cross stick. So you've got lots and lots of different things. If you move up the keyboard, you end up finding things like like the snare flams and snare rolls. But, you know, it depends how far you want to go with this. And this is indeed where you get your drummer in that can do all of these things, snare fills and playing the snare in different parts of the actual drum to simulate dynamics as well. There's lots that the computer can do, but there are big gaps which are for the drummer to fill. Now, we've got some tom sounds here as well. We've got the low tom very often has 2 keys. Now, for this, you can go things like this. Where you'd use the floor tom instead of your hi-hats. Now, other things we've got, the toms are fantastic sounds as well. They're beautifully recorded and dynamic. Notice you can also hear the snare rattling when you hit the tom. So there's lots and lots of programming and lots of thought that's gone into, well, just one of these drum kits. Now we've got crash cymbals. And have a crash cymbal that's played with a bell. A ride cymbal, that's a pretty gentle sound. And you've got the ride cymbal where you hit it with the shoulder of the stick. Ride bell, there's the bell of something else. In fact, it's that other crash cymbal. So there's a lot there. Now, if you're doing something like a ride cymbal, part of your tune, like in the chorus, for example, you would usually have the offbeat. There would be something going on with the closed hats. If you watch a drummer playing with a ride cymbal and a snare like that, there'll be the hi-hats will be sort of dancing up and down as well. You can simulate this by actually having your left hand to do kick, closed hat, and snare. Now, as you do more, it gets harder to do the things like the little grace notes on the snare, if I was to do those with just the hats. And you've also got to watch out that you don't play those grace notes too loudly, but you can do that afterwards. You can just find the grace notes, everything that's off the beat, and just lower it. That sort of thing. So there is a sort of really a roundup of the drum kit. It's worth trying to play essentially your drums in. Now, if you make a mistake, it doesn't really matter. If you've got 16 bars of a verse and you go wrong in bar 5, you can just swap it out for one of the other bars, maybe somewhere that's in the second group of 8 bars, so it'd be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Bar 13 could come to bar 5 or copied over if there's a problem. So masses can be done, but of course, let's never forget that the drummer is really your last port of call when it comes to doing your records to the absolute nth degree.